Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deeper, let's start the show.
Welcome to Ramblings of a Busy Mind, episode 11 with Doris. Sorry. It happens because we have been laughing already beforehand and I almost couldn't get it out. So Doris Walsh, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
So Doris lives in
The UK.
And helps parents. Is that right?
Yeah, working parents. Yeah.
Working parents. So similar work that I do with professionals, but you are focused on parents more or less. Yeah. And yourself, your mom yourself, right?
Yes, I am. I've got 2 horrible kids. Yep. Guilty.
And we just learned that the German brain can't translate tweens. It goes to, this is 20 some. Well, it's not even teenagers yet. Is it correct? Yeah.
Not proper teenagers yet. Yeah.
Proper teenagers, yeah. Nice. That's British English. You grew up as Dutch Chinese descent in England. Is that?
Yeah, so I am a Dutch-born Chinese, lived in the Netherlands until I was 12. And then basically my mum just upended the whole entire family and we moved to Glasgow in Scotland. And that's kind of where I did my secondary education and tertiary education and where I started my corporate career. Yeah.
How was that as a kid?
Tough. Not the Netherlands, but that bit was fine. While I was very young, I also moved to live with my paternal grandparents in Hong Kong for about 3 or 4 years. But the move from the Netherlands to Glasgow was very tough for a good few months because I'd never up until that point experienced true racism. The Netherlands is such a small country, right? And they're very accepting. They're quite open anyway, right? We were the only Chinese family in our village, and my parents owned the local Chinese restaurant. So everybody knew me. Our family was the only Chinese. I'm just thinking back now. I think the only non-white family at the school. No one treated us any differently. But then we moved to Glasgow, which is a much bigger city. We lived in a small town up north in the Netherlands. We moved to a big city in Scotland. I was initially very excited because I was like, because we get to learn languages quite early in the Netherlands. I was like, oh, English, yes, I get to practice my English. This is great, right? We landed in Glasgow. It was in November, so anyone who's been to Scotland, mostly it rains and it's typically very dark. But anyway, so this is in November, and got off the plane, and I was sat there. I was like, I hear speaking, obviously, but it wasn't English, right? It was Scottish, and my ears weren't used to that, obviously. And I just sat there. I was like, Mummy, I think we landed in the wrong country, right? Because it was not like the English I'd been learning at school. And I was like, people here don't speak English, right? And my mom was like, oh, don't be silly, because look, there's your Uncle Jackie over there. And that sudden feeling of, oh, shit, right? I was excited about, these people don't speak English, right? Anyway, so I went to school, and where we lived, the school that I went to initially, my younger siblings went to a more like an English as a second language school initially to get the language up, but I got straight dumped into the local high school. And again, I was the only Chinese girl at this school. And kids can be really horrible. And I didn't fit in, right? And I didn't really understand what they were saying to me, but just by the tone, I knew that they were saying not very nice things about me. So, there's nothing that we could do, right? We're living here now, right? Mom and dad started working and all that kind of stuff. So I remember, for a long period of time, I had to go to school. There was no choice, right? I had to go to school. But on the way home from school, I'd be crying tears but then they magically just clear up, right, by the time I got to the front door because I didn't want to worry my parents. So, but it was tough, for the first few months until the language came and all that kind of stuff. And then I started making friends and then things turned out okay.
Did you ever find, when you look back in your life, did you ever find that this experience translated into later experiences or
I
colored?
think it's just made, yeah, I think it's just made me become more aware of the differences
Mm,
that we have. But it's now kind of come full circle, really. As I was going, growing older and, even while I was doing my corporate in my corporate career, I noticed more the differences in people. Where now that I've exited corporate, I actually see more for we have more in common than we are different, right? So this kind of come full circle. But I think any of those kind of experiences that leave kind of emotional marks on you, kind of you carry them with you, right? I've never been one person who's been really resentful or really angry. That's not the kind of person I tend to. For long periods of time, I tend to just internalize, right? This is the outside package, but inside, oh, I kind of have to keep it safe for me, right? So I didn't, and I think that's probably what happened from that incident. I grew I grew a barrier
mhm.
around my emotions.
If you, it's interesting that you say, now that you've come out of corporate, school is high stress, high, how do you say that? High expectation, same as corporate. Would you say that relates to seeing now the commonalities and not the differences anymore?
Yes, yes. But I think corporate, I felt I felt freer. And actually now you're saying that and I'm thinking about it, I think I felt freer because I actually left home. I think the most of the expectations came from parents, right? About, how I should be, especially as a, foreigner in a white country, right? Chinese girls, this is what Chinese girls do. I've got two brothers and they were a lot freer, right, than girls, right? Because, just boys can do everything that they want, but girls, no, this is what um, so there was my parents were very strict. I mean, very, very strict. I mean, if I think about how they treated me or us as kids, if I treated my children like that, I'd be in prison, right? Because but they didn't know any different, right? They didn't know any different.
Yeah.
And I look at my kids and I'm like, you get away with friggin' literally bloody murder, right? And but my parents are very different with their grandchildren, right? I mean, there's a soft as marshmallow, right?
Mm.
With us, they were as hard as nails, right? And you're sitting there like, whoa, right? But anyway, so yeah, so I think when I finally left home, I had that bit more of a freedom
Mhm.
to to I didn't know who I was, really.
Mm.
I didn't actually know I never really knew what it was, what I wanted to be when I grew up.
Mhm.
Right. Even throughout my nearly 20 years of corporate career, I just wanted to enjoy what I did. And I always did. I have a huge amount of energy, always made the best out of, wherever I was put in terms of roles or whatever else. But the upbringing that you have as a child, you carry that through, especially when we're not taught to create awareness around ourselves,
Mhm.
right? We're
Mhm.
just taught to do. And that's what I did. I did. I do, and do things very well. And once I exited, left, I call myself an ex-corporate captive, right? That was, when I kind of really did that self-awareness, right, and
Yeah.
personal development and explored, it's like, oh my God, I've got all this BS around me that actually isn't helping me at all in any which way. Actually, you know, I realized that I was actually throwing rocks in front of my own path, not even in front of others. Others weren't throwing rocks at me. I was throwing them at myself, and I was not aware of it.
Mm.
So yeah, so that started the last few years started the whole unpeeling of all the things and all the layers and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, some of it was like tough, right? To kind of really look at yourself without, pink tinted glasses, right? And yeah, and growing from that.
Change is never easy, but that's the fun
You
in it.
know,
Like when you see
yeah,
when you see where you've been and how far you've come and where you can go, when it opens up those possibilities, all of a sudden you're not stuck in that box with
yeah,
that label,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you can be just you, right? You can be just
yes.
Doris, who is a mom, yes, but at the same time she's her own person. She's not
Mm,
labeled as the mom who does, right? Or the
yes.
mom that
Yeah,
works, or the
yeah,
corporate person that, which is
yeah.
one of the biggest parts that I found when I quit my job 2016 and went self-employed, was one of the biggest freedoms that I had. All of a sudden I could make it mine. I could work in my pace. I could, and that meant sometimes working till 3 o'clock in the morning, which at that time still being like in the burnout
Yeah.
box very much. Didn't matter these days at 11, like lately, let's say this way. I had a big huge fallback last year back into burnout that I don't remember what I've done between March and August. Not a clue what I've
Wow.
done in that time, like completely zoned out. And I had some fallbacks lately, up until I'd say like 3 weeks ago or something like that. But I realized where I'm at, and I realized where I'm gonna go. But last week, even so, I'm really stressed. I'm in bed before 11:30, which is for me really early. Lights out, and I sleep through, which usually
Yeah.
doesn't happen because it's like, oh, yeah, brain, go, 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 right? And these days my brain goes like, I'm done. I'm shutting off. And then I fall
Mhm.
asleep on the computer. So late nights like this, like 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting and typing and whatever, not happening anymore.
Mm.
Like,
But but what's really interesting with you talking about this, with burnout is, you had a big period of burnout, right? 2016, that's when you went into self-employed, and then you've had subsequent periods of that, right? Have you noticed the trigger now about how you potentially feel or what it is that you're doing?
here's the trigger. Here's the trigger that I tend to. It's cute that you're interviewing me now. You just
We're
flipped
having
it
a
around
chat.
on
I'm
me.
just learning. I'm just
I love
learning here.
it. No, the fun part in that is that the trigger usually is that I have too much stuff that needs to be done now. Or I tend to, if I'm in, I can't even say I'm enthusiastic about something, but I'm a perfectionist, and that's still burnout. Some things have to be done really to the point, like my taxes. I don't want to hand off my accounting without having everything checked, doubled and tripled. That's me. Um, and that's a holdback because then I put myself into stress that I have to get it done and I cannot get it done in time. So that's one. The other thing is I tend to once in a while overdo it with I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. Not setting clear boundaries,
Mm.
not being clear with myself. This is what you can do, and this is what you can't do. So in March and April, no, March and August last year, I did publish a book in December, and I went into social media and I shut myself down with social media basically because I
Right.
got into it has to be done, it has to be done, instead of finding a way to say, okay, it needs to be done, yes, but if it's not getting done, then it's not getting done. And that's my approach now. I'll try to do what I can, and if I can't, then I don't. And I don't fret
Yeah.
about it. So I'm okay with my post not going out today. It's going out tomorrow. My newsletter from April is sitting in my inbox. It's not done yet. May will come to it together because they're gonna be sent out together then. The point is, I try and I know where I can change things, but I know at the moment I don't have the capacity brain-wise to understand what I need to do. And
Yeah.
unless that is done, there's no diving deep for me. because
Right.
I cannot comprehend what I'm doing, and then I will get stuck in that rabbit hole of I need to, and this should work this way, this way, and it doesn't work. So I just let it go, and then dive into it when I have time again, or when I have somebody at my side who says, okay, you need to go here, there, this, and this works. Yeah. So it's just a matter of being clear with yourself and understanding your own limits, basically, right?
Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
And that has helped quite a bit. One of the persons who helped lately quite a bit was Summer, who mentored me up until I think last week, and having an accountability party, right? It's having somebody who says, "Did you do? Can you do? Why can't you?" Having to reflect on, which helped quite a bit getting things done. I think the podcast would not have been finished yet or not being published yet, if she wouldn't have been there. Yeah.
She's got huge energy.
Oh yeah, a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
always amazed because I think like holy crap, I swear.
So do I.
The things that she pulls out of us in the networking and in her courses is amazing. So she's one of the
Yeah.
biggest influences for me, but I know at the same time she won't be for everybody. It's like me, I can help some or assist. I'm not helping. I'm assisting, I'm supporting, because I don't do the work for you. You're helping yourself. I'm just standing by your side, and I lend a hand when you need it, but that's it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because that's what I learned. Then when anybody tries to take the learning from me and the core, like I need that's thinking back to what I said before, I need somebody who tells me this and this and this. Yes, I need that now to get it done, but I want to understand what I do. So as soon as the stress is gone, I can dive deep and can learn again, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you have to be really clear about your limits and what you want to do. I don't want anybody to take away my learning curve. Never ever,
No.
because otherwise there's no growth.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
Back to you. How do you work with parents? What is your
So I work with parents who are typically professionals, whether that is a corporate or their own business or whatever else, and they feel overwhelmed. They feel overwhelmed by the demands on their time, the expectations they have of themselves, and the continuous loop of you're not being a good enough employee, you're not being good enough wife or husband, you're not being a good enough parent, and you're not a good enough daughter or son or whatever else, right? They feel just overwhelmed, feel guilt and shame, right? And when they're with their kids, they're a bit short, even, they're thinking about work, and when they're at work, they're like, oh God, I mean, I could have done a bit better with the kids or whatever else. And through my exploration on that, what people typically do, and it's kind of mirrors the journey I've had, was that especially once the education system is great, everyone should go into education, right? But we're never really taught to really dive into what's really in our heart, right? What is really important to you, right? We live by societal rules. We live by our parents' rules. We live, and although these rules are not hard rules, they're not written down anywhere or anything, they're not black and white, right? But we see things and we absorb it and we think, oh, well, this is what good looks like, right? And then you set yourself a goal, especially as you start on a corporate career or something. It's like, well, what does success look like? Success means I get a promotion next year or I get a pay rise next year, right? And it's all about the external, right? Validations, so that is visible to others that you are successful. Okay, so, and actually, and that's great. And it works really well for a period of time, right? And it's great, you start earning the money and then you meet your love of your life, maybe, right? And then you have two incomes, right? And it's like, whoa, no, life is so good. We can go to Paris this weekend, honey, or New York next month, right? You have all this disposable income and you go and live your life, right? And then, you want to start a family and you have kids. None of us are ever prepared for kids. You plan to have a kid, right? So that's okay, one or two or however many, right? But what happens is that, okay, you have a child and you start your family and everything is great, right? But for those of us who wanted to continue our corporate careers, right, and our career trajectory and our ambitious side of us, right? We're like, okay, excellent. Baby is here, excellent, right? The baby's going to go to nursery. I want to go back to work, right? Okay, you go back to work. You go back to work and then things start. My brain hasn't changed, right? My expectations didn't change. During my maternity leave, I didn't consider, oh, well, because my aim was always to go back and work, right? That's what I wanted. I never even thought about how is that going to fit into my life. I just thought, I'm capable, baby. Yeah, okay. Didn't realize that I was actually doing more than 2 jobs all at one time, right? And then realizing that I was like, why is this feeling so hard? Why am I so exhausted? I am short with everybody. Every little single thing seems to annoy me. Okay, there's a bit of exaggeration and it's not 100% of the time, right? But that keeps on going, right? But you still want to be that career person, right? And you keep on going. But over time, especially as the kids grow older and they need less of that really basically 24/7 care, you sit there and it's like, there's something missing. But you don't really know what it is. You can't really kind of, oh, that's missing. Right? There's just this feeling of, is this all there is? Because I'm not quite sure that this is what I truly signed up for, right? And that all goes back down to, how we haven't redefined success when big transitions happen in our life, right? Because we're not conscious of it. We just made a plan, right? And we're great, right? We are great at making plans and executing the plans, right? That's great. But we don't really look at it kind of from a holistic perspective. We just think, oh, we've ticked that box. What's the next tick box, right? But with families and with humans and with emotions and relationships, you kind of have to be a bit more intentional about that. So by helping those parents kind of really assess what's truly important to you at this point in life. When you're in your 30s, it's very different probably to what you were in your 20s, right? And now if you're in your 40s, it's probably going to be different to, so what is important now? And then help them to really define, what's truly important to you. How can you live your life to whatever the values are and what's important to you? And it's all about digging deep, right? It's getting down to the roots, really, right? Say what's really important to you, right? I don't like to say just treat the surface symptoms. Let's go down to root, because that's once you're really clear about what it is that you truly want, then it simplifies life,
I
right? It
agree.
simplifies decision making.
I agree absolutely. Like, and that fits in all areas of life, not just parenting.
Yes, yes,
And
yes,
the interesting part is, as long as you don't know who you are, and that, like, knowing what you want is the same part, you cannot stand up for yourself. You cannot make
yeah,
decisions for yourself because you don't know what to decide on, right?
yeah,
You cannot set
yeah,
boundaries because you don't know where those boundaries are.
yeah,
Cannot say your
yeah,
expectations are not mine, they don't fit my lifestyle or my picture of myself, because you don't know what you are, you don't know who you
yeah,
are, you don't know what you're supposed to be, right?
yeah,
Other than what
yeah.
others put on you. And I find in my work, or with clients, when I work, as soon as expectations are there, and it doesn't matter if it's an expectation from the outside or from the inside, because how often do we really put ourselves in a box that we
Mm,
can't really fill, or we don't
yeah,
fit into it? um, there is no healing, there is no
yes.
moving forward, there is no growth in there, because you're always limited by those boundaries that you are not aware they don't serve you.
Yes, they're sucking your energy out, right?
Absolutely.
And you know what? At some point, in the past, it probably worked for you, right? It probably served you at some point in your life, right? But what we typically don't do, um, and this is where kind of helping to raise the consciousness, right? Awareness of people that we work with helps, is to say, because something worked 10 years ago, it doesn't mean it's got to work now. Right? You have a choice. But people believe that, oh, I've done this now. Okay, and now I just need to add more stuff on, more stuff on, more stuff on. And that's how people, get overwhelmed and overwhelmed because, people pleaser, oh my God, yeah, platinum carrying member, right,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
diamond studs on it.
Here, me,
That
me,
was me.
me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And then feeling resentful when you said, yeah, 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 and you still didn't get the result that you wanted or expected, right?
Or yeah, or the acknowledgement. That's the next thing. Like
Yes.
you do what they want and they don't acknowledge it because it's not really fulfilled because they don't even know what they want, which is
Yeah,
another one
yeah,
I love. But the
yeah.
interesting part, what you just said, about oh no, I lost it.
That's all right. I'll
Ah,
come back. We could
it
go on.
it was something that I could relate to. We'll come back later.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never was a parent. It was never meant to be because the time that I could have had a relationship or children, I was in burnout and I couldn't deal with
Right.
myself,
Yeah, I
right?
feel yeah.
So,
Mm.
but I don't regret it because the neat thing was that the way that I was brought up, my mom had, you would call it foster kids.
Yes, yes, yeah,
So
yep,
not daughter of own, but
yeah.
daughter of a friend,
Someone
and then
else, yep.
growing up with
Hmm.
her. Like I had a big sister, and I had a little sister that I grew up with. That
Wow.
were no
Yeah,
sisters, and I have step
yeah.
siblings too. That's the other part. But the fun in that was that we always were close. Like we were like siblings, even so we
Yeah.
saw each other not that often. And even to this day, my stepbrother, when he comes by, like his kids are my nieces and my
Nieces and
nephews.
nephews,
My
yeah,
brother
yeah.
has stepchildren, stepdaughters that are my nieces. I don't discern that step doesn't
Mm.
belong there. It's they're our kids. Um, I don't know if I would have been a good mom. I just know these days I am the one kids talk to because
And
through my journey I learned not to judge, right? So they have a judgment-free
yes,
zone. And
yes.
kids come here and I've always done that because friends of mine had 5 children at the time when I left Germany. Um,
Wow, yeah.
they grew they raised their kids that nothing was forbidden. No, nothing was forbidden unless it was said so,
Okay.
which is a really, really cool principle. And
Mm.
if it was said so, it was always explained why. So if
Mm.
you told these kids don't do that, they wouldn't do that because they
Mm.
knew it has a reason.
Yeah.
And they did that from the smallest one, like all the way up to the and seeing that was like a part where I said, okay, kids here, if kids run free and roam free and do what they want in on my property, then it's my fault if I don't put away what I don't want to be broken or if I don't set the boundaries, right?
Mm.
And parents came and said, "Your kids are so my kids are like they come home, they go to bed, they
So
didn't
well behaved,
argue.
yeah.
They didn't argue about that." I said, "Yeah, they had fun." And they were busy and they were not in front of the TV. And she said,
Mm.
"How did you manage that?" I said, "I just let them roam free,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
With care, but never with restrictions that are not explained, right?"
Yeah. 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 And there's some great lessons in there, because I've totally changed my own parenting style. I said, my parents are Chinese, right? So, the tiger, dragon, mummy thing. Yeah, I'm tiger, dragon, and all the other fierce animals, right? When I was growing up, my two young kids, right? Very dictatorship. I just said one, and I expected one, and there was no negotiation or anything like that, right? Right up until a point, it didn't work, right? Because we were so strict with our kids, and that was beautiful for a very long period of time because the whole when it's bedtime, it's bedtime. We had really set routines, right? Um, and it worked beautifully, right? The kids didn't until it didn't, right? Until it didn't, and then I sat there. I was like, shit, this is no longer working, right? How do I do this? Because our oldest was having major kind of temper tantrums, right? I mean, massive, and I sat there, I was like, and what I used to do was, because I'm the parent, right? I'm the one with power, right? What I was doing was I was basically overpowering my child. No awareness of it. I was no aware. I just knew I had to be right. I'm the mom. I have to be right, right? And that's how we did it. And then we moved to Greece, and my oldest one especially, he was the one who was having freak out, and he would go into rage mode for like hours on end, and then it lasted for days. And I just sat there, I was like, this is freaking exhausting. I don't know what to do with this. I have no tools in my toolbox, none. Everything that I've been doing up until now, it's broken. I need help. And that was the first time in my parenting journey, really, that I asked for help, right? I had asked for help from my parents, especially during the kids' summer holidays. Hey, could you come and help me look after the kids, because I still had to work or whatever. But that was kind of a given, if you know what I mean, right? Grandparents are supposedly there to look at, and this was the agreement I'd had with my parents for sure, right? I will have children, but you come to me when I need you, right? Because they were retired, right? I will pay for your flights to go to wherever we're living, and you will look after my kids, right? That was the agreement. But that was the first time, back in Greece, when I said, I don't know how to deal with this. And I sort of went to parenting class. And like you say, and then that's kind of how it got me into coaching. And then I got coached. And it's that whole, what you were saying, it's like, setting the boundaries, but telling the children, but why, right? It is not just saying yes or no. It's giving them the context. We were partly using that, right, up until, I totally changed, but it wasn't quite enough. I wasn't changing and updating my style, parenting style, as the kids grew older, right? I was still like, it worked from day one. You're now 7 and 8 or 9. Why is it now not working now? But using this method, right? And as we said earlier, change is all there is, right? So if I don't change along as the parent, how is that feasible, right? All it causes is just actually more stress. And as the kids get older, we expect them to take on more responsibility and all this kind of stuff. But my changing kind of shifted in terms of, instead of, I grew up with, you must get A stars and 100%, all this kind of stuff, right? And that was what I was like with my kids initially. It's like, you get a spelling test, 12 out of 12. That's what I expect. You get 12 words, I expect 12 out of 12. And when you only got 11 out of 12, well, that one was wrong. Which one did you get wrong? Okay, you write that out 10 times, and then I'm going to test it on you, and all this kind of stuff, right? The tiger parenting, dragon parenting, right? But now I'm not sitting there like, nah. We don't hear about the 100% in our house. It is all about, I got asked this question: do you really want what is it that you truly want? Do you want your kids to be successful, or you want them to be happy?
The question
And
in
I
there
said,
is, what is the success?
and I was like, and ultimately, success is it's different for everyone, right? And what was success for me when I was 20, so I'd been going on this journey, right? This, trying to get clear in my head of what was important to me. I was like, well, success, what I do deem a success might not be what he deems or she deems, my children deem to be success, right? So that's not for me to define for them. And ultimately, I want them to be happy, right? So if I want them to be happy, why am I spending an inordinate amount of time getting them to get the straight A's and do all the stuff and do all the things, right, that I perceive right now that is important for their success? They have no idea what it is that they want to do, right? As long as they're doing well enough at school, it's going to be okay. But the happiness, that resilience, that feeling of, when something, negative happens to them, or not, something doesn't happen to how they expect it to, but for them to be able to bounce back from that is what I want my child to do, because any of the skills that we learn are transferable, right, from personal to professional,
absolutely.
right? So that's what we've kind of focused on now. It's kind of, I want you to be happy. That doesn't mean that they get to do everything, right? There are rules. My house, my rules, right?
I love the approach of, and I hear you. I grew up with a single mom. My mom
Mm.
was alone with us from my parents got divorced when I was 6, and my stepfather moved in shortly before I turned 13.
Wow, okay.
And honestly, we did basically, for the most part, do what we wanted, for the most part. Because looking back, I know we didn't. Mom was working full time
Yeah.
with 2 kids at home, and we had a babysitter, a nanny, and her daughter grew up with us. Like she came into the house when her daughter was 6, so that's one of the siblings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, 6 months, not six, 6 months.
Once,
And
yeah.
the thing is that looking back, basically we did pretty much what we wanted.
Mhm.
And then my stepfather came and he put up rules and regulations. Like he put up
Mhm.
boundaries, which didn't go well over, especially with my brother. So there were fights, and to this day, my stepfather and I have some days where we just fight, and but for the most part, we understand each other pretty well. And the interesting part is that he was, for me, not, I don't know if it's for my brother, but for me, he was more a father than my father ever were.
Mhm.
Because when I walked into the door, and to this day, like no matter how much we fight, I walk into the door and he looks at me, he goes like, okay, tell me. He gets pretty much, if I need help, if I'm in despair. My father never could deal with emotions. He was there to
Mhm.
scold me because I failed Latin, which I did beautifully. and and it just was at a point where that was also part of that journey. I was bullied in school,
Mm.
and my mom couldn't deal with me at that time because she had her own problems, and we were very close. We were very much similar at that time, especially. We were very similar, and I was told you gotta look for the fault in yourself, which didn't help. So there was no joy really going to school at that time.
Mm.
And that started the path of spiraling down with some schooling, right?
Yeah, okay.
But to this day, I am who I am. I just finished my master's. I'm going for the PhD, and my mom said, "Oh, we're gonna have a doctorate soon." It's like, yeah, Mom. No, but on the other hand, my mom is the biggest supporter. So in the
Yeah.
situation that she was, and I understand these days at a 13-year-old or 14-year-old, I didn't understand what was going on, and a 16-year-old, especially not. No, um, especially as we grew up um really nicely supported. So anything about crafts or arts or
Yeah.
whatever, my mom and my grandmother were always there. Archaeology, ancient, like I've been to Italy. We did the temples, we did anything that you could find. My grandmother was really
Mm.
fond of stuff like that. Churches. No, I'm not even baptized. We were dragged to church, and I love to go and I enjoy the serenity of them.
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person, but just that part, she installed the respect for that, right? That
Mm.
other people have different opinions. So all of that make me who I am today, but the rest
Yeah.
of my life makes me who I am today too. And
Yeah.
I'm always wondering if I had part of what I lived through, if I grew up differently. I don't know. I don't know because my base nature is the carer, and
Mm.
I tend to do too much for others.
Yeah, I mean that comes through really actually, yeah, in this conversation. Yeah, you are the carer, right? You
Yeah.
you lead with that kind of energy, right? I want to help, right, and support, right? But and part of the burnout maybe, right, is that because you give too much and
Yeah.
you don't look after yourself, right? It's kind of and how I use it with my clients is like, we all have, a barrel of apples, right? You keep giving it away to others, right? right? But you don't say time out for a bit, right? I need to go now and pick some more apples. You're just giving it away. And ultimately, the barrel will go empty. And even then, you still want to give. You're sitting there like, oh my no, I'll give more, right? But until you replenish it, right, you can't serve. And this resonates with me because it kind of gets to a point where now my view is slowly changing. I don't live it totally yet, but I have to look after myself. And actually, because for a long period of time everyone else was more important than me, right? If the children were and the husband and the mom and dad, everyone is happy, then that equals Doris is happy, right? For a
No,
very long period of time,
no, it doesn't
for a
work
long
that way.
period. But it's only recent, it's only when you go through ups and downs when you suddenly sit like, oh, time out. Why this equation? There's something not quite wrong here, different here. But no one ever told me throughout my adult life that Doris, is important that you look after yourself, right?
I think
People
that's
said it, but I didn't really know what it meant.
no, I think it's part of our upbringing. I don't know what year you were born. Like I'm
Yeah, I'm 50. I just turned 50.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm 54. So the way that we grew up, our generation grew up, was not focused on the inner. It was all you had to be presented outer. So it
yeah,
was
yeah.
not important how you felt inside. It was important what you presented,
Sent it.
that you
Yes,
that you
yes,
fulfilled other people's expectations. And there we're back to expectations and clear boundaries. These
yeah,
days, for me, it was the hardest thing for a long time to ask for help.
yeah, yeah,
How sad is that if you can't voice it, that you are at a point where you need help?
yeah.
And
And not only that,
COVID
sorry to
was one
interrupt,
of
but
the
yes.
times where I actually, for the first time, felt I knew which people to call when I needed help,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
to realize you can't do everything by yourself and you don't have to do everything by yourself. That's the
Yeah.
biggest
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
which before was
Yeah.
not there. Like before it was like, yeah,
Yeah.
I can do that. And no,
Yeah.
it's my job. I have to do my job. I called a friend today because with the podcast, there's so much stuff
Mm.
to do, and I have so much on my list right now from other things that need to be done. So I said, "Can you help me?" And no question asked, she said, "I'll be there."
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's not something big or technically challenging. It's just time consuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing was like, can I really call her?
Yeah.
But then I thought, yeah, we are friends. If she needs help, she calls me. Why wouldn't I call
Yeah.
her?
That's but it's really funny, right? If someone was to ask you for help without even thinking,
First
you'd
thing,
say,
yes.
yes, of course. Yes, of course, right?
Yeah,
Because you lead with that kind of I
yeah.
care, right? And I want to help, right? But how in some way stupid is it that and you
Really
feel good,
stupid.
right? When you help you feel good that I've helped and made your life just a little bit easier or made you laugh or had a good time or whatever, or looked after the children, whatever. It makes you feel good,
That's the
right?
error.
But that's the carer bit. But I don't want to ask for help. How selfish is that actually of you,
Yeah.
not to give that same feeling, that same opportunity of someone else to
Yeah.
give back to you for them to feel good,
Shift of
right?
perspective is an interesting part when you start to
Yeah,
look at things from not your perspective, but from the
yeah,
other ones.
yeah,
Then all of
yeah,
a sudden you realize, holy crap, am I sometimes egoistic,
yeah.
egoistical, right? And
Egoist, yeah,
yeah, and then what I also find is like, I know we talk in our group of friends often with the kids, like the kids make mere errors and whatever. I said, yeah, let them do. You cannot hover, you cannot prevent them from going into shit, getting into crap,
yeah,
because otherwise they don't learn.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
part of
yeah,
life.
yeah,
If you keep them
yeah.
in that box and then all of a sudden they have to be not in that box, they cannot survive.
Yes, yeah. And I think depending on the generation as well, that they've got all these different names of parenting, right? The lawnmower parent or the helicopter parent or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. But it's kind of like you say, my view on growing my two kids, right? One is to keep them alive. I have succeeded so far, so which is great. They are
You
still
haven't
alive.
killed them yet. Nice.
Yeah. So, and every birthday that they have, my husband and I like high five. We've done another year, honey. Let's see, but the teenage years are coming, right? So,
Yeah,
it
you're
might
gonna
not
have
be like
fun.
that. Yeah, yeah. Have fun. Yeah. Or I might end up in jail, right? But,
No, I don't
the way
think
I
so. I
look at
think
it.
you have a pretty good approach.
But sometimes, you know what, when I just want to get myself out of a mood, I'm like, do you know what? Going to jail sometimes
Would be nice.
would be a godsend. There's no children fighting. There is not, I don't like this food or I don't like this food. I'm going to get my food cooked for me. 3 meals. I don't have to prepare.
It's
And there is
funny.
no quiet. It's going to be
It's
awesome.
it, it's so funny because you say that I don't have kids, but I have my pets, and I escaped to Tim Hortons to work there because I just have no pets that want something.
Yeah, it's exactly the same
It's
thing.
somebody who's depending on you and who has expectations on you,
Yes.
like to open the
Yeah.
can or whatever. Yeah, I know you don't
Yeah.
have to get up. The dog's getting up even. Snort. But the fun part in that is really that when you give them the freedom
Yeah.
to see how they take the possibilities and opportunities they have and make them their own, that's so rewarding.
It is. It is. And you know what? And this is, and my husband and I have continual chats, kind of like, I'm not here to stop my children to make mistakes because that's not real, right? Because I can't always be there for them,
Mhm.
right? Right. So, but it's the letting them know that if you make a mistake, it's all okay. It's not a problem, right? Because if you don't make mistakes, you're not trying hard enough, right? You
Mhm.
don't learn, right? But ensure that the mistakes you make aren't life-changing
Mhm.
for you or someone else,
Mhm.
right? Stick within the law. Stay
You
within the law, right?
basically
That's it.
basically you are giving them the respect and the responsibility to
Yeah.
become their own, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Yeah. Because
we
they can't
don't
be
give.
me. They
Yeah,
can't
no,
be
that's
me.
that's the point. They cannot be you. They cannot be like
Yeah.
they're a totally different person.
People, yeah.
As
Yeah.
close as we sometimes are with our parents, or as
Yes.
similar we are, still we are a different person, and we
Yeah.
evolve
Yeah.
differently if we have the chance, right?
Exactly. And not only that, it is only right that they have their own experiences, right? I could wrap them up in cotton wool, right? But how is that going to serve them?
Not at all.
Right? It's not going to serve them, right? It's kind of like, okay, you failed, right? Because for a long period of time, I used to sit over there and I'm making sure that they've got their homework done and I was correct and all this kind of, now I'm sitting there like, nah, it's all yours. You're old enough to look after your own responsibilities. The teacher gives you homework, you do your homework. Okay. That's all I expect from you. I don't expect you to get 100%, right? Kind of aim for 80. If you
Mhm.
get 80, that means there's room for improvement, right? Because if you get 100% all the time, either it's too easy or you're working way too hard, right? To get that 100%, where you could be using that time, the effort that you put in onto something else.
Mhm.
80% is great, I think. 80% is great. Not that we don't celebrate when I do get 100%. Of course we do, right? We celebrate. But actually, what I celebrate more is when they get it wrong. When they get it wrong, I'm like, oh, yes, yes. And they get really annoyed, especially the older one. He gets, why is that one? Why did I get that one? I was like, that's amazing. Because if you are perfect, there is no growth. When
And
you're perfect all the time.
not only that, if you're perfect all the time and then you're not,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fair. It's
Yeah,
really
it's
like that
hard.
can throw you so much that you're not like coping,
Yeah.
especially as a
Yes.
kid.
Yes. Yeah.
Same with us
Exactly right.
grown-ups
Exactly.
when we're always just soaring up, 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 and then the higher you are, the deeper the fall.
Yeah, no, totally right. Totally
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And but actually that's now come back to something that you said, you didn't know how to ask for help, right? I was always a person, especially when in my corporate life, I was always quite happy not to acknowledge that I didn't know everything, right? I went to every new position, new job as blank canvas. This is blank canvas now, okay? Let me learn about what it is that you do. Then let me know how I can fit into that and how I can support you. You can support me. And I've always loved working with people. But, for some people, some more senior people when I was working, when I did ask for help, and we talked about the whole generational thing, right? Asking for help was a proper weakness,
Yeah.
right? Well, who are you? You're effing useless, right? if, and swearing and all. And I sat there, I was like, how do you expect me to know everything? You have given me this job. I've literally stepped into this role a couple of months. You expect me, I have never gone through this process before, and now you expect me just to know it, right? And I just sat there and, being made to feel like this, right? And you're sitting there like, and back in the corporate back then, I was still, the person who shouts the loudest, right, must be right.
Yeah.
And this is where I revert back to my own inner, Chinese girl, right? Okay, I can't make waves, okay, I'll just have to take it and leave it. Now, if that was to happen to me now today, it would be a whole different story, right? But that's the beautiful bit about the evolving of life, right? And like you said earlier, if I'd had a different upbringing, right? If I had different experiences in the past, you'd be a different person now,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And but I can see from you is that yes, things I've experienced, I wouldn't want other people to experience, but I have gone through it. It has made me stronger,
I wouldn't.
right?
I like people ask sometimes, do you wouldn't would you want to change something? And I for the most part, no. There's
No,
nothing big that I would,
no,
because I am who I am today because I lived my life.
yeah, yeah,
And these
exactly.
days I live my life that I have no regrets. Right?
Oh, it's so funny. I was speaking to someone earlier today. I was like, you come across Doris as if a person that, you kind of have no regrets. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah.
Somebody said we had what was it? We had a workshop or something like that, and they said, "What is your fear?" I said, "I have none. I see it as a challenge, so I cannot say it's a fear. Like even right now, thinking about can I afford the PhD? Because I'm not in a financial
Yeah.
situation where I could say I can put that money down, which would be the easiest way.
Yeah.
But I think about it and I reflect on it, and I'm sure I can do it."
Mm,
Right? I just have to set it up the right way.
mm,
So there is no fear per se about not being able to make it, but it's just I'm able to look at the whole picture and say, okay, this is what I have, this is what I can do, and this is in my ability. If I see that not in my ability, then I'll go and then I'll leave it be. And a
yeah.
lot of things that I do is trust and gut feeling. So I trust
Mm,
my belly, and my belly says you can do it. So then I'll go. Why wouldn't I? The fun
mm,
part in that is coming from an energy healer perspective.
mm,
As soon as I have the trust, I have the gratitude that I can do it, I'll achieve it already. Because my mind is
yeah.
set on, yes, I'm not building up blocks and blocks and blocks that won't let me achieve. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
find often with kids, especially like kids, maybe not now, because we had a nice discussion with Robert Tero last time. He's
Yeah.
gonna come on the podcast too, and I
Ooh,
realized
awesome.
that I was he was triggering me in what he said, and not in a bad
Yeah.
way. It's just
Yeah.
something he said, and then looking back, and that's what I do is I reflect on it, what
Yeah.
was said, and why did I react the way that I react, and why did it influence me in that way. I realized that I was not clear in the way that I voiced what I meant. So there was
Yeah.
a little bit of misunderstanding because I was not talking about kids today. He has a 5-year old, so he's thinking about his kid right now that
Yeah.
my perspective is a little bit older because the kids in my area right now, they are right 16, 17 now.
Mm,
They grew up differently,
yeah.
right? And seeing that change just within 10 years,
Yes. Yeah.
so huge, right? But it also taught me to be very careful in, or not careful, but precise in how I tell my story and what I think.
Mm,
Because otherwise I go into that place where I have to defend myself. No, I don't have to defend myself. He has his opinion, I have mine. We can
mm,
disagree. But
yes.
the misalignment came from my perspective of not now, but 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Basically those
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to see when you start the habit of okay, something's said and it's triggering me. Okay, I tie in right away. It's not that I
Yeah.
go like and and build
Ah,
the
yeah.
emotion up and whatever. No, I go like, okay, why? And then
Yeah.
to see, okay, it's that simple that I should have said
Mm.
kids 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And this thing, it's kind of like, whenever you have any triggers, right? It's not to react to it. It's to take note of it, right? Say, and then turn on your internal investigator, right? Inner scientist or anthropologist, like, ooh, just curiosity. Oh, this is interesting, right? Because, and then, you not to say, oh, I am angry. Oh, I feel anger. It's different, right?
Yeah,
You don't say that I am an angry. I'm just having these emotions.
yeah,
Or I feel a bit threatened. I'm not threatened. I am not threatened. I feel threatened, right? It's just kind of trying to get that little bit degree of separation. And then it's kind of like, taking a magnifying glass to it, right? And say, oh, this is interesting. What's going on? Because, and this is what all personal development is all about, right? But it's just to have that awareness, right? When people don't have that awareness, they will react and they do get angry and
yeah,
they do get shouty
yeah.
and they want to be the right one, right? And yeah,
I
nothing's
have
ever that important.
I have a basically a personal call, so and it's gonna be online soon. So far I
Yeah.
just did that as a VIP ticket, but the point being is it's clearing your emotional uh, regaining your emotional clarity. So we're just looking at what's triggering you, where's the emotion, and then trying to shift that to the different perspective. And I have
Mm.
had that in friends and families where people go like, ah, they are always keeping me checked and they're always criticizing, blah, blah, blah. All I say is, did you ever think they do that because they're fearful for what happens to you? They do that out of love, but they can't voice it a different way? Oh no.
Yeah.
Different approach. Just
Yeah.
think about what others, because I that's one thing that I found was often the biggest hindrance and the biggest misunderstanding, that people thought they knew what I was thinking, or I thought what they were thinking, instead of really
Asking. Yeah.
communicating.
Yeah.
And I love that part of to say, like, when you're in an argument, from what you say I hear.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it brings back, and then you repeat what you understood from what the other person's saying, and
Yeah.
then you can see that there is quite a difference, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And do you know what? Also, like that when people want to have an argument, right? Like I say to the children, just because your sister wants to have an argument with you, that's just an invitation. You can say no. You don't have to engage, right?
I do
It's
that.
like
I
just
walk
because,
I walk away. Like, I
yeah,
my
so
family,
do I now.
because
Yeah.
my father, my stepfather, and my brother can be very like, Paul can be very
Yeah.
picky, and he hits always the same spot. So I just get up and run away, not run
Right.
away,
Yeah.
walk away.
Oh, well,
And he says, well, it's like kindergarten. You don't. I'm like, no, I don't have to deal with that. And
exactly.
my brother, these days we have and he has changed since we started doing that. My mom and I, when he starts yelling, we hang up. He's getting warned twice, and then we hang up the phone, because you don't have to
Excellent.
yell, right? And
Yeah.
that's again bringing you back to that, set a clear boundary of
Boundaries.
what you
Yeah.
allow and what you don't.
But you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and another great lesson in this is that whatever comes out of someone's mouth says actually more about them than about you. Right?
Most
So the
times, yes.
words that I say and how I communicate is a message about me. So it's kind of like, so that helps makes things less personal, right? It's never an attack on you if someone is angry, because they're actually angry at something about themselves, right? And it's kind of like having that
Or
field,
they
invisible
don't
force
know,
field.
they don't know how to deal with
Don't
what
know
they have
yet.
to deal.
Yeah.
And which just reminded me, my mom always said my father used to break dishes so he didn't have to do the dishes. It's the same thing,
Yeah.
right? You
Saying,
start
yeah,
an
yeah,
argument so you don't
yeah.
have to deal.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's very good expression. I'm gonna write that down.
You got So we have an hour in, and we were supposed 20 minutes. It's so funny. I set the time for the discussion's always for 20 or 30 minutes, and lately we've always been going an hour or more because it's so interesting. Anything you would like to share with people? Pointers, any tip that you would give anybody who is in stress with their kids or who feels not the way they should be happy?
I think that I think with anything, listening and being there, when listening, not just physically, but mentally, right? Psychologically being there,
Be present.
right?
Yeah.
It's so easy to say, oh yeah, 5 minutes, and when so anyone is talking to you, your brain is actually solving other challenges elsewhere, right? Or sorting out, what we're going to have for dinner tomorrow or whatever else. Is actually, it literally only takes just a couple of minutes. You don't have to, because the presence, the children feel it. The energy that comes across is very different to someone who is distracted, and the kids notice it, right? So it's just having those, and making it that intentional, right? So it's the, put the phone down, right? And make sure that child said, I'm putting it down, so I focus on you, and I will only have, mommy only has, daddy only has, 10 minutes before our next call or whatever else, right? 10 minutes. I'm going to put 10 minutes on the clock. Yes, what do you want, right? And be totally there, focused. And especially when they have things to say, not to jump straight into fixing mode, right? And we had lengthy discussion on that, right? The children don't need fixing. Most of the time, they just want you to acknowledge them and to validate their emotions or what they're going through, right? And then give them the opening instead of saying, oh yeah, maybe you could do this, because it's so natural for us to do that, right? So, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you tried that? Right? Because we've gone through it all. But it's to say to them, okay, so, right, I'm really sorry that you're feeling like that, right? So how do you want to solve it? How can I help you? I'm not telling him what to do or telling her what to do. I'm saying, and if you do need my support or help or whatever, then just ask. I trust that you have what it takes to solve this problem between you and your friend at school. I totally believe that you know how to solve this, right? And I've started doing that lately, and it's amazing. Arguments, moods just disappear. The kids just like, oh, okay, someone believes in me, right? So yes, these are some little things. They're neither right nor wrong, right? Try them out, and if they're don't work, come back. I've got plenty more.
I love that you say that, and I would actually emphasize that it's not just kids, but it's like treat everybody
yes,
like
everyone.
that, because that's like the biggest part that we have in our everyday interactions, that we're not trusting others to do the right stuff.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to reach out to you, your information will be in the caption, and
Awesome.
Everything that you provided, social media, whatever, so they can reach you, they will find you.
And you can't run.
No. And I thank you so much for. I love.
I had a blast.
I had a blast. What comes out in those discussions and conversations, because that's everything that's needed comes up. That's what I believe.
Yeah.
Right. In
awesome.
one way or the
other. I had a blast. I had such a good giggle. So thank you very much for that, Sasha.
Thank you. Anytime.
Yeah. I will see you.
Yes.
I will see you at some other event.
Yes.
Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Ideas fade, others shine. Oh, welcome to my busy mind. Questions, answers, here they go. Digging deep, let's start the show. Questions, answers, here they go.